drugs, rock and roll. I grew up in the 60s and it was shocking. We were the baby boomer generation born from 1946 to 1964, and we're now in the age range of 51 to 69. We created the largest cultural revolution the world has ever seen. And I think we're doing it again in our 60s. Because boomers today are the fastest growing, the wealthiest, the boldest, the most ambitious, the most difficult and demanding, the most health conscious, most obsessed with experience and service, the most female, and the fastest growing segment on Facebook. And we vie with all of you millennials as to who's the most self-absorbed and narcissistic. In the next 20 years, you will witness the loss of my generation. Your parents, your grandparents will die, and you will be shocked if you haven't been already. And I would like to think that you're going to miss us. I was born after World War II, and I grew up in the 50s in a small town on Route 66 in Oklahoma. I called it a peek and plum town. Peek around the corner and you're plumb out of town. After World War II, what people wanted was affluence, social status, and technology for their cars and for their kitchens. They got it all right, and they got it in spades at a faster pace than they ever dreamed possible. They had money, they had leisure time, and they were happy. Now, there wasn't an invention in the 50s. Are you thinking? What was it? No. That TV. That black and white TV. We stopped listening to the radio and went to the TVs. My dad had plenty of money to buy a TV, but he said, I'm not buying that thing. No, 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 no. It's just a fad. I'm not doing it. So I had to watch Mickey Mouse at the neighbor's house. I found myself torn between two generations. I had one foot in the door of the 50s, the black and white door, that said, accept the status quo and follow the teachings of your church and your family and your community. But then, over here, was the door painted in psychedelic colors that said, if you go through this door, you get to color outside the lines. And you can abandon the rituals and the beliefs of the tribe that I had grown up in. Well, the 60s started for me in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco in 1967. History has coined that as the Summer of Love. We wore flowers in our hair, bell-bottom pants, and no bras. Men grew their hair really long and wore Victorian clothing with like hats with plumes. There was free love, psychedelic drugs, and 2 years later, we were at Woodstock. But the rose-colored glasses that we wore were shattered when the government sent troops into Vietnam, 1965. I marched in the street with a sign that said, make love, not war. My parents were appalled. Boys I knew flew to Canada to avoid the draft. Others carried protest signs. Hell no, we won't go. And for the first time, we watched the war on TV, up front and in our face, and it was horrific. 3 boys that I went to high school with enlisted together and went to Vietnam, and they all came home in body bags. It haunts me still today. It was shocking. I watched the assassination of President Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers. I watched that on TV. And I read Our Bodies, Ourselves, and I read the Cahill Gibran, The Prophet, and I witnessed the struggle of the civil rights movement starting out. Many of us in my generation got venereal diseases, and a lot of us died with a needle sticking out of our arm. Others went to prison for possession of one joint. Now that was shocking. When I was growing up, no one ever mentioned the word sex. It was a taboo subject. There was a short movie at school that we watched about anatomy, and then the girls had a special class that said we were going to, with a movie that said we were going to start bleeding when we were 12 for 5 days. Girls then were supposed to be virgins. so they could, in a clear conscience, walk down the aisle in that white wedding dress. My mother used to say to me, "If you're not a virgin, no one's going to marry you." And I believed her. The raciest book that I had on hand was The Scarlet Letter by Hawthorne. But when girls got pregnant in my school, they didn't wear the A for adultery. They just disappeared. Poof, they were gone overnight. Some girls had to get married, and then they endured the gossip. But either way, there was shame, and there was plenty of it. When I went to college, it was primarily to get a husband, an MRS degree. I majored in home economics so I could be the best stitch and stir queen anywhere around. And you won't even find home economics in the curriculum today. When I was 21, a naval officer proposed marriage to me. And I said, yes, because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And plus, I didn't want to be an old maid, which was a fate worse than death back then. In my wedding vows in the church, I promised to love, honor, and obey, forsaking myself for all others. On my honeymoon night, it was awful. It was painful, it was uncomfortable, it was scary, it was awkward. I never took off my nightgown the whole night. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, for this I waited? While my husband was out to sea, I taught school. And I was the envy of the entire faculty because my students behaved themselves. And the reason is that I said, if you get all your assignments done and I don't have any discipline problems, if we have time at the end of class, I will answer questions and talk about sex. The first question that was asked was, do you take birth control pills? Of course, I had to say yes, and that meant that I was reprimanded not long after that by the school board. Today, kids learn sex education by watching pornography on the computer. Most boys have seen pornography by the time they're 11. I think that's shocking. I mean, if I carried a sign today, it would say, make love, not porn. Or it would say, make love, not babies. Or maybe it might say, make love, not scars. When I was divorced, I made an about face on that monogamy issue. I called it my period of so many men, so little time. I could trip them and beat them to the floor, I thought. And for the first time, I had orgasms. That didn't happen when I was married. I lived after birth control and before AIDS. I lived in the best of times. In the 50s, the assumption was if you were a woman that you would become a wife, a mother, and a homemaker. Back then, a woman couldn't serve on a jury. She couldn't buy a house or get a credit card without a husband. You could aspire to be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary, but only working until the children were born. If you were a teacher, you had to quit if you got pregnant. Getting an abortion was in a back alley. That was shocking. But the most shocking thing that happened in the 60s was the advent of the birth control pill. Yes! This reality changed everything forever. We had to play like we were engaged for a doctor at the health center to give us a pelvic exam and to issue a prescription of birth control pills. So, of course, I had the 5 and dime engagement ring that all of my sorority sisters and Tridel shared so we could get the pill. Having a pelvic exam, my legs spread apart for some man that I didn't know was the most shocking thing that happened to me back then. With birth control pills, women had a choice for the first time of whether or not they would have children. And they could have affairs just like men, because they didn't have to worry about getting pregnant anymore. And with an education, They didn't have to depend on men financially, so they could leave abusive relationships, violence. And what was shocking to me is that my society at that time approved standing by your man and suffering an abusive relationship more than they approved of a woman getting a divorce. Getting a divorce was shameful. That was shocking to me. Today I'm shocked about who I've become. Shocked I'm not a wife, mother, and homemaker. The course my life has taken has been nothing like I expected. I'm shocked to remember that I was sexually abused by a Baptist deacon next door, and I never told anyone. I'm shocked my husband divorced me because I didn't want to have children. Shocked that I felt freedom and liberation after relationships were over. Shocked that I had sex with men I wasn't married to. 50, 75, 100, I stopped counting. Shocked I never remarried. Shocked I got pregnant. Shocked I had an abortion. Shocked I became a foster parent. Shocked that today my best friend is my housekeeper. Shocked that he is a homeless man and he is the man in this world that most cares whether or not I'm happy. I'm shocked I got fired. I'm shocked I declared bankruptcy. Shocked I traveled around the world, mostly by myself. Shocked I never found the one. Shocked that I can be lonely sometimes when I have a computer, an iPad, and a cell phone, and probably 2,500 people in my database. Shocked that I'm here today saying all this stuff that I'm saying to you. I can hear my mother saying right now, she said it 1,000,000 times, you just don't air your dirty laundry out in public. And I'm shocked that my longest lasting relationship, 16 years, was with my Vietnamese potbelly pig, who went on stage with me as a sidekick and was the inspiration for my life change to being on stage. I am shocked my parents died. I thought they would live forever. Shocked that the loss and the grief still endures. And more shocking is it seems like they just died yesterday. And that's because I'm old. I hadn't noticed. I'm going to die in the next 20 years or so. I'm in the last chapter of my life. Today I see a reflection in a window when I'm walking down the street. And I go, well, who's that old lady? Hi. You too will get old if you're lucky. And you too will die. Shocking, isn't it? Just like sexuality was the taboo of the 60s, death seems to be the taboo today. And I find that shocking. When I talk to my peers about death, they think, oh, that's morbid. I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about something positive. They tell me I need to get a facelift right away because the longer you wait, the harder it is to get out the wrinkles. And I see them become exercise nuts, raw food addicts, and they seek medical attention at the drop of the hat for anything to stave off that aging process. I hear, well, I take care of myself. I'm going to live to be 100. Well, some will and some won't. My greatest nightmare is that I would live to be a fucking 100 years old. I'm not afraid to die. What I'm afraid of is becoming irrelevant or invisible in my culture and in my society today. And I have one greater fear than that, and that is that I could be a burden to someone else in my aging process. I hear people say, I'm not going to be in a wheelchair, sitting in a nursing home, drooling all by myself. Well, that is exactly what's going to happen to these boomers that don't have it written down and the proper documentation of what they want. A lot of them haven't saved money for these older years. And with today's trends, 90% of people die in nursing homes or hospitals. Boomers are going to die shocked. I never saw a dead body. Have you ever seen one, a dead body? Well, let me tell you, I hadn't seen one and I just walked in a funeral home. I didn't know what I was going to do, like say, are there any dead bodies in here I can look at? But there wasn't a soul there, so I went into this room, and there was a man laying embalmed in the casket. And you know that saying, you'll know when you know? Well, I knew that man was dead as a doornail. In my parents' day, the dead laid in state in the living room of the house. They died with their mouths open, their eyes frozen, and when they started to smell and turn black, they buried them. Everyone saw the body as it was. It was not pretty, but it was real. But today, we think maybe embalming people is more desirable. They wire your jaw shut, and they put makeup on you, and they shut your eyes. And so people can file by the casket and say, doesn't she look natural? The cost of looking natural is that those embalming fluids they're toxic, and they go into the ground with those dead bodies. Cremation puts out a lot of CO2 into the air, and that's not much better. I heard a joke the other day. Someone said, cremation will be my last chance to have a smoking hot body. My will is very specific about not being embalmed, not being put in a steel casket, and not having anything that even smacks of religion around me. It spells out what to do with my money, if there's any left. I'm hoping the last check bounces. I've listed my friend in my health directive as the one who pulls the plug if the time comes. I know she can do it because I was with her when she had to do it for her mother. I've spared my only sibling, my brother, of that task. When I'm on my deathbed, I think I'll be present as I've never been present ever before. I want to savor every moment that I'm there. I think it's going to be exciting. So I have made preparations, and I bought a eco-burial plot out just past the airport where I'll be buried, wrapped in a cotton sheet, deep enough so the animals don't dig me up. I don't want my body parts over there on the airport tarmac. And I want to keep it simple. I want a little rock beside my little grave that reads what I wrote. She never ran out of things to talk about. She just ran out of time. And I may be running out of time, so I'm going to move on here. But I wanted to tell you that I'm shocked today that with my education, my money, my consciousness in the world, that I am hopeless to right any wrongs, stop any atrocities, or save the environment. Stop racism, preserve the reproductive rights for women. I used to protest, write letters, but now it all seems so big and so hopeless. I do nothing, and that's disturbing to me. Nothing people do anymore really shocks me. I'm kind of thinking maybe I'm shock immune. Maybe you've got an idea and you can see me after the talk, try to shock me. But the truth is, I want to be shocked. But I want it to be different. I want to be shocked by real connection, lovemaking born of true intimacy, an emotion that I feel by seeing a beautiful painting or hearing some music that inspires me. Birth, new life, Earth's incredible way to rejuvenate itself. I want to be shocked by sweetness, tenderness, and incredible acts of kindness and compassion. I want to be shocked by being a light for someone at the end of the tunnel. I want to be shocked by being a role model. I want to be shocked to know that something I did made a difference, no matter how small it is. I've experienced a lot in my 69 years, and at certain points, I have been so certain about things. But the more I know what I don't know, and I'm not so sure about much of anything anymore. Maybe I'm not self-absorbed and narcissistic after all. I hope that's true. But regardless of my age, I'm going to continue to grow and change. And if you know me today, don't think you'll know me tomorrow. I will not be the same Aralyn Hughes that I was yesterday. There is one thing, though. I want to wake up in the morning, and I want to get out there in the world because I do not want to miss one shock opportunity. Because the truth is, I am part of this culture. And if it's not shocking, I'm not interested. Thank you.